How do you stop clients from rambling? So I have one client that she likes, and she writes grants. She's a wonderful person. She's a wonderful business, but she gets herself so worked up in the details that she starts to tell you way more from a financial perspective than I really need to know. You know? And recently, I mean, she knows I love and care about her and everything, but recently I had to say, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to, like, this is what I really want to know. Just tell me this information. I don't need to know the other. We can talk about that another time, but I just need to know this. So, Anik, you had a comment on that?
I straight up say that sometimes the stories are really interesting and I want to
Yeah.
hear it. And
Yeah.
I will say, listen, your stories are really interesting and I want to hear them, but we only have X amount of time today. And there's stuff we need to get through. So can you give me summaries if you really need to tell me the story? Otherwise, all I need is the account. Like, right? If you know what account it's going to go to, then fine. Otherwise, give me like the summarized version of the story.
Right. That makes sense.
And sometimes it also means that for a couple of meetings, I, I, I do a hard stop at whatever the meeting end time was. And I go, sorry, we're out of time. We'll have to take it up next month. And you do that a couple of times and they realize that it's practicality. Like this isn't a social call. I like you and all, but we're working.
Right. I find sometimes for me it helps for me to have an agenda that I give them ahead of time so that it has the flow, so I can, what were we supposed to be talking about? Because we're not talking about any of those things on my agenda.
Yeah, it gives you something to like bring them back to.
Yeah, exactly.
But also to point at, to say, look, we're on item 2 of the agenda, and there's 5 items, and we're 3/4 of the way through the appointment.
Right. So Tristan, you had a comment?
Too funny, writing on my notepad, no agenda meetings as you're writing the importance of it. First, I know these will be tactical. First, I'd like to address the subset of people that don't talk enough. And I believe these fall under the 2 primary reasons, and you should falsify these before going anywhere else because they're the easiest. 1, slow thinkers and need time. So you're right, an agenda would be very important. Letting someone know a week in advance the questions that they're looking for information for can really provide them the time to really fill that out and blow that out. So they might need thinking time. Secondarily are the people who don't need thinking time, but they are scared. That might be the wrong word, but they aren't able to answer this because there's some concern of some negative outcome. Very generic, but it's just there's a worry. There's no question that Chris Vaughn's methodology of labeling the negatives is the best bet. And often I like it sounds like you're worried you're going to give me the wrong information, and then silently shut up. They'll correct themselves if I'm not right. And then again, it's really just labeling all their fears and letting them know that they're visible, and then they can kind of open up. I don't know which one it is because that'll change by client and client, but almost every time that is the slowing down of the communication when they're not talking enough. The too much talkers are harder to deal with. Tactically, requiring them to make the agenda will do 2 things. It will reduce the amount of unnecessary meetings because it puts a prerequisite, and you shouldn't be making the agenda now. You've given yourself a new job to make them less work. You should have them do that job first, so you actually reduce your work rather than switching it left to right. Some people will be against this, which you give a format, which is just generic, and you let them correct it how it is. Don't give someone a blank sheet when you can give them something they can edit. People edit quicker than they fill out of nowhere. So that can get that forward. With the ones that are extremely talkative, we have to appreciate that some people cannot give their answer without doing the math, and that math is them thinking about it out loud and they don't talk to themselves. So guess who gets to be that human being in that moment? The only way I have found this to be successful is to acknowledge that this is true and one of your innate values is that, and I start to push asymmetric meetings very hard in that, hey, it's hard because you have to start with a guess and then they'll kind of correct the way, but you just start somewhere. Hey, it's a video meeting with an email, and you're talking to them asymmetrically as if this is a 2-way meeting. You have to behave like it's a walkie-talkie, do first, and then it just starts being mirrored. Hey, you know what? This and this are real concerns, and I'm sure you have X, Y thoughts about this. It's crazy busy. If you don't mind just recording a video directly to me so I can watch it this week, I'd be super appreciative. and then you know, have AI transcript that, give it to them, email. Whether they like to read or whether they like to watch or listen at 2x speed, they're going to now know that they're going to record you a meeting. So rather than scheduling something, you'll get the same thing in kind. They'll watch that video, they'll be inspired to respond in whatever is their best method. And now you've done a lot of that, you know, because you have to do that wide work to get narrow. Give them the ability to do that without it taking up your time and attention. And then we circle back to the meeting agenda. You can push it on them with ideas based on their blowout. The strategy and the orientation after getting the information, that's where it gets more nuanced, but that's literally what I do for everyone. And the success rate is very high, which is all I want.
Typical for myself when I speak to clients. And the thing is, you want to build or maintain that relationship. It's a relationship, and the relationships between you and your clients is what's most important. So you want them to be comfortable enough to speak to you, but at the same time, have that respect for your time because you are working for them, so to speak. So for the clients that have an issue with talking, they don't want to talk as much, you basically got to know how to ask the right questions to get the information that you need from them so that you can do what you need to do and then end the call. For the clients that speak too long, I've had thousands of long-winded clients and they love to tell their stories. What I find helps out a lot is keeping them to the time constraint. If you don't have an agenda, sometimes at the start of the call, you say, hey, listen, we're just going to touch on this, but I do have a meeting coming up at this time. So I'm probably going to I won't be able to speak to you as long as I normally would, but let's try and get as much covered as we can today. And they usually respect that. And then when it gets to around like the 10-minute mark where it's close to my next quote unquote appointment, I'll give them a reminder like, hey, listen, I have that appointment coming up in about 10 minutes. So let's try and wrap this up a little bit so that we can get the information that I need to move your case forward. And they typically respect that. And if I still need additional time after that, they'll know that we can always schedule an additional appointment for another time, like maybe the next day or the next week or what have you. And they usually respect that. So it doesn't feel like I'm pushing them off or I'm rushing them away and I don't have to, like they still feel that sense of respect for our relationship, like I'm there for them.
Oh, great tips. Those are great tips. Yeah, I do like the idea of having them when they have something that they really feel needs a lot of context for whatever reason to make a video and send that ahead of time, because that is helpful, because then they're able to express however they feel they need to express whatever the issue is or the concern. And then I'm able to really try to listen and go, what are we really talking about here? What needs to be addressed? And I find sometimes with my agenda, I tend to put the things that are the most important or have like a due date or, a stop date first. They don't necessarily flow the way that they should, but at least it gets through those important things first, and then we can talk about everything else later. But I like that. I like that idea. But you're right, Anique, that you do have to really be firm with people. You just have to say, hey, this is the time. Let's talk about it. And Melanie, you had a comment?
Yeah, I really like the video idea also. But for me, because I am really trying to nurture relationships with my clients, I also agree that I need to make some time for people who want to tell their story. And I like all the suggestions, and they're excellent about keeping them on point to get the information. But there's times that I can just say, I want to hear more about that story. Let's get this information first, and then we'll circle back to that. But then, even before I go into an engagement with my clients, I have a pretty good idea of whether they are a chatterbox, basically. So I can kind of work that into my engagement so that I know that I'm going to be setting aside a little bit of extra time to just chat, to just talk to them, because sometimes I'm working, you guys, most of you are working with business owners, and sometimes they just need to talk about whatever's going on. They don't expect you necessarily to solve their problem at a professional level, but they may just need to share these different stories. And so I think for me, it's important to allow some time for that. But being deliberate about it is going to allow me to, not just be wasting a whole bunch of time sitting around for hours talking to clients.